Just in case you were wondering, no, I did not move to the sun. I was finally able to get a ring light, and I'm going to have to be very directly looking at the camera because if not, it is going to blind me if I accidentally look at it. It's very, very bright, but there are some filters that it came along with that I can try as well, which I'm really excited about, which might change the color, soften it, make it easier for me to actually see and use up close. Because one of the really cool things about this ring light is that in the middle it has a stand, which is what my camera's on right now. So this is going to allow me to do so much more stuff. I can move more around my house. I now have my Zoom microphone on a tripod that I formerly had to always put my camera on. So now that I'm able to have this on a tripod as well, I don't have to prop it up against something, and it's just making everything feel a lot more professional, I guess, and real. It's going to be so much easier to try to accomplish some of the things that I've wanted to do. So I'm just really happy, and huge thank you to Olivier for allowing me to make this investment. It's super exciting, and I'm really looking forward to everything that this is going to allow me to do in the future. And thank you to all of you patrons, especially because all of your support is what keeps this going and has also allowed me to invest in making better videos and upgrading my equipment and so on. So it just really means a lot to me, and I'm super appreciative, and I just had to get all of that out of my system before we get started on this tier video. So today I kind of wanted to talk, our tier 2 video for this month was centered around sort of just an update with me, and I got to talking about a lot of different aspects, I guess, of my life and socializing and other things. And something that I think I might have actually mentioned the word once in that video, I'm not sure. If not, it was on my mind, was the idea that I really wanted to kind of follow up with and talk about in this video, which is the concept of boundaries. And this includes like setting boundaries, realizing boundaries, everything that has to do with kind of sticking up for yourself and others. And I think that it's really hard to set boundaries a lot of the time. Not only because we have like emotional baggage and things that we're dealing with from our own upbringing, I guess, but also because sometimes the people who we need to set boundaries with are people that we care about, our friends, and that can be just as difficult. And still, sometimes we have to set boundaries with ourselves. We have to force ourselves to do something we don't want to do, for example, or learn to allow ourselves to opt out of things that we don't want to do. Whatever the case, either way you look at it, it's still setting a boundary and following through with it, for yourself or for someone else. And I know I, for one, never even understood the concept until I was in therapy, and not even like the early stages of therapy, like years later when I was already on like my third or fourth therapist. That was when someone finally brought it to my attention that, hey, Elo, there are these things called boundaries, and you are allowed to set them. And you're not just allowed to set them with people who are your equals. you're allowed to set them with anyone, your parents, people who are authority figures in your life. Obviously, you can't break laws and you shouldn't disrespect other people, but you still are allowed to have personal, moral, emotional, and physical boundaries that you do not allow other people to cross, and you don't allow yourself to cross maybe sometimes, depending on the situation. So this was a brand new concept to me, and it came into play, of course, talking about my parents, and but also I'm going to use a different example. Not that this isn't something they did, but just to not be talking about my parents for once. So at one point in my life, I dated someone who was pretty, like, emotionally abusive, I guess. I don't guess, he was. I should be firm about that. He was emotionally abusive, and a lot of the times in conversations or arguments, really, he would be very threatening with his words and behaviors, and it felt like I was trapped. Like I had to do what he said or what he wanted, because if not, then, you know, there would be some bad consequence for him or for me or for both of us. And I found myself getting sucked into conversations that I didn't want to have, like long drawn out, me getting bashed over something or having to feel really bad about something that I disagree with, for a really long time. It wasn't really a healthy conversation, and thankfully I was able to recognize those behaviors, you know, the unhealthy conversations, the manipulation, all of that kind of stuff I had seen before, so I was able to recognize that. But I came to a real standstill when it came to like dealing with him and his outbursts and angry, aggressive sort of threats and things. So my therapist brought it to my attention that I don't have to do anything. I am allowed to just say, like, hey, I don't think this is a healthy conversation or a constructive conversation. I am going to leave, and then just do it. And she pointed out to me that other people in those situations will commonly resort to certain behaviors. So the scary kind of people will typically raise their voice to try to get an emotional charge out of you, say something hurtful for the same reason. They might make a threat on themselves or on you to try to get your attention, draw you back into the conversation. They could yell or pester you, such as calling your phone repeatedly, texting you, all like nonstop, anything like that. People can absolutely do and will do if they're upset because you're setting a boundary that they don't like. But that's kind of just part of it. It's not your responsibility to force other people to respect your boundaries, in the sense that you can't make everyone agree with you. It's not like you have to force your beliefs on other people. But it's, I guess, I don't want to have to, or not have to, but based on my personality, I'll keep explaining this until I feel like I've got it right. So I'm just going to use a quick analogy. I just think of this, and this is the most simple analogy. It's not even an analogy. It's like literally the exact equal of the, like, what you're doing conceptually. But think of yourself building like a literal, you know, kind of box around yourself, a boundary around yourself. You've constructed it and it keeps things out, but you don't have to push it onto other people. And no one is allowed to break that space that you've created. That's yours, that's what you believe in, and when other people are throwing things at that space, whether that's yelling, being negative, hurting your feelings intentionally, stalking you to try to get you into a conversation. Any of those things that they're doing are just not, you don't have to react to them because you've already done your job. Your job was to build the box, and you did. And now you're just sticking with it, and that's it. You don't have to say something back to them. You don't have to pick up their phone call. You don't have to reply to them in text. And in fact, if you want to, you can block them or take further measures to remove yourself from them. Obviously, if the person's like really crazy, you're gonna want to get a restraining order or something. But let's just say this is someone who is in your life, for better or worse, they're in your life right now, and they tend to have a way to get you stuck in emotional spaces that you don't want to be in, or they make you do something that you don't want to do. They make you uncomfortable by talking to you about things you don't want to talk about, whatever. It doesn't matter. Those are your choices. It's your life, and once you decide them, you are 1000% encouraged to follow through with them, no matter who the other person is who's pressuring you. This is something that you're going to have to learn to do, that we all have to learn to do, that I've gotten better at, but still am learning to do, is to apply these rules in all situations. So not letting the fact that, if someone's your boss and you feel like you're going to get fired, or if someone's an authority figure and you're worried that, I don't know, whatever, you stick up for what you believe is right. Some of those situations are really high pressure and things that you'd never want to be in that situation, and I hope that you never will be. But if you ever are, you need to build these smaller steps. You need to set boundaries with the easier situations to work your way up, so that if a difficult situation does arise, or let's say you have something that's recurring in your life, a relationship that you wish you could set boundaries in, practice with other people, practice just in the day-to-day. Every day, try to make it your goal to notice if you want to set a boundary for something. Don't even say that you have to do it right then and there. Just notice, like, I really wish this. I really wish that I didn't let that person call me on, or whatever. Like, I really don't like it when so-and-so touches my shoulder, and I want to be able to tell them, like, in a nice way, that I'd prefer that they didn't do that. Whatever it is, it might be more intense, it might be less intense, it doesn't matter. But you can practice with those small things once you start noticing them. So I think that the main reason why this skill is super important to me, the thing that I really want to dive into, I guess, or impress upon in this little chat, is just that it's really hard. It's really hard to set these boundaries in certain situations, and as equally hard as it is, it's important. So if this is something that you've struggled with, I definitely wouldn't feel bad about it. Like I said, I learned about boundaries myself really just through therapy. I didn't have a concept of that beforehand, and actually, I don't know if you guys remember this book from some of my other videos, but the Dialectical Behavior Therapy Skills Workbook. This was something that my therapist recommended that I get, and we kind of worked through some of it together as I was learning some of these skills. And it really, not everything is about setting boundaries by a long shot. There's a lot of information in here, and that's not the point. is information in here that helps with those goals, I guess. So in the later chapters of the book, there are interpersonal effectiveness skills. It starts on page 181. And these skills start talking about being mindful and paying attention, which I don't know how loud that book is. So, as I was saying, the skills start off with mindful attention, which I guess is similar to what I'm talking about in terms of being aware of times that you might want to set a boundary. You can't really change your behavior if you don't know what your behavior is. And I think a lot of us just kind of go through life and just experience it, and maybe when something really major happens, we will analyze our lives, I guess. Sorry. We'll analyze our life or that moment, that choice, that event, and we'll try to take something away from it because it was so huge. But the truth is that a lot of the times building to those huge situations is like the product of a lot of smaller situations along the way that we don't pay attention to. And we're always gonna end up hitting that big, scary, hard moment, the one that we constantly panic about, the one that we're trying to prevent all the time. Whatever that upset is likely going to happen, and it's more likely going to happen if you're never changing anything about how you live in between those big explosive moments. Nobody likes feeling sad or shameful or disappointed in themselves. People like to feel good and happy, and I think that's a lot of the reason why it's so easy for people to drink and do drugs and like escape reality in their own little way, is because having fun is more fun than not having fun. And even though it seems kind of counterintuitive at first, putting in the work towards bettering yourself and fixing those little things along the way that we usually just kind of shrug off or ignore or intentionally like sweep under the rug and hide from, all of those things, if we deal with those on a more regular basis, it makes the valleys of life a lot shallower, and we're able to, I think, enjoy the peaks more without the fear of the fall, if that makes sense. And I think that, again, setting boundaries is something that it's not just with people, it's with plenty of things. It's kind of, to me at least, I can't speak for everyone, but to me it's almost a form of self-control. Am I capable of stopping myself from doing this thing that I don't want to do? Can I stick up for myself in this situation? Everything that you do to set a boundary is like a decision that you're making about yourself. And that's not a scary thing. It's pretty intuitive. It sounds big and scary, but I think for most of us, these are pretty good decisions. Usually if someone like tosses a hypothetical at you, a would you rather or something, usually I think most people have a gut feeling one way or the other. And clearly people have opinions about a lot of stuff, or we wouldn't be so angry with one another about having opinions. So I think that even especially for that reason, it's just important to kind of think about the things that you can be doing every day to help set these boundaries for yourself, help mold yourself, create the person that you feel like you are. Are you the kind of person who would allow this thing to happen? Is that who you want to be or not? I think that a lot of people see themselves as the superhero because we are ourselves, so it's really easy to make ourselves the main character. And, people tend to want excess. That's why our society has boomed and just developed the way that it has. It flourishes all over these countries, and money and power are just the most important things out there to most people. Material gain becomes very important, and everyone's moral compass is kind of all over the place and based on their goals, and all of our goals kind of get reshaped around these commercial ideas and capitalist ideas, and it's really easy to just get sucked into all of that and start doing things that maybe aren't up to code with your moral compass, or maybe just aren't even who you really are or what you really care about. It just seems so fancy and glitzy and oh yeah, I want all that, and maybe you don't even want all that. It just seems to everyone like that's what they want. When I think about traveling or something like that, I'm like, I want to see the places, I want the pretty pictures, and I want the food. But I don't want to fly. I don't hate flying, but the thought of flying for 12 hours being suspended in an aluminum can in the air, I don't like that thought at all. I bore easily, so I don't want to sit still for 12 hours when I'm not in control of my fate. And I don't want to deal with the tourists and the noises and the things that are going to make me uncomfortable. So think about something like that. It's do you really want that thing, or does it just look nice? It's hard to connect with ourselves, our really, innermost self, and really get in tune with what we want and what we like and what makes us tick as a human being, when we're constantly being bombarded with ideas about what we should want and what we could have. Oh, if I had all this money, then my problems would be solved because I would have a personal trainer, and the personal trainer would correspond with my chef, and the two of them would get me in perfect condition, and life would be, so then I'm okay, that's my goal in life, is to get rich enough and wealthy enough to have a personal trainer and a cook and a hot body and explore the world. And I'm this is all coming from someone whose favorite things to do are play video games, be outside on her bike, and read books. What does any of that have to do with the things that I actually like? It doesn't really. It's just me trying to attain some body goal or some financial goal or some societal standard that I feel looks nice. Yeah, those people have perfect makeup and their faces look so good and they're so pretty, and that looks really nice. But if I went out and got Botox or lip fillers or something, that's not in line with me at all. I don't like the thought of altering my body. I don't like putting chemicals in my body. I'm vehemently against those things. I have a hard time even taking Tylenol. So why would I want to do all that? It feels almost like I'm being brainwashed when I really think about it. It's just strange, to have these goals that really don't line up with who I am as a person at all. So then it's just what do I want? where setting boundaries and learning more about yourself really comes into play. The small little things that you do in your day-to-day lay the foundation. And as you continue to do that and you're building that wall of who you are and what you say no and yes to, what you believe in, what you don't believe, all of that, every little step that you take makes it easier for you to be more confident about the harder decisions in life. So if you're someone who's built on a rocky foundation, you don't have a wall around you, you might have a really hard time choosing or making a big decision or standing up for yourself in a really critical moment. And those regrets and those sadnesses are so much bigger than, I guess an easier way to say this is the effort that it takes to eliminate or reduce those sadnesses is worth it, because feeling those really hard gut punches in your life is something that nobody likes. Even when we're children, we don't like that, and we have these very specific memories because of those moments. I don't know about you though, but nobody really ever then said, like, here's what you do instead, like, go out and be yourself. What does that mean? Like, no one taught you, or no one taught me, I should say, to like actually set boundaries, or like, what does it mean when I feel this way, or why do I feel this way? What decision is most in line with me? And it's never too late to start making those decisions. I don't personally believe that people's like fundamental core ever changes. I think that we're always gonna have whatever predispositions we're born with, because that's just how genetics work. To me, that's just science. But I do firmly believe that people can grow and evolve, and I think that we have the ability to master the things that are maybe not our strongest qualities, and we have the ability to better ourselves by choosing the things that more represent who we want to be than necessarily who we are, if that makes any sense. And you know, everyone's allowed their own philosophy. That's just mine. I just think it takes work. So I would start, I guess, as small as you can, as small as you have to. Sometimes people need to, at the end of the day, like, write down potential situations rather than thinking about them in the moment. Sometimes that can be really hard, or sometimes, you know, you might only need to reflect or start reflecting directly after something happens, but after the whole event is over. So let's say you're out with your friends, and something happens and you feel weird about it. Don't let that ruin the time that you're having. So kind of save it. Move past it for the moment. Don't let it ruin your time. Finish your event, have a good time, and then when it's over, that's when it's a better time, a more appropriate time to reflect, because you can give it your full attention and you can really analyze without the pressure of anyone else around you, or the pressure of a conversation even, making you feel like you need to do something differently, you need to say something differently, whatever. And that's okay to do at first. You don't have to handle every situation right when it happens. You are allowed. You can even tell people, this is what I did when I started. If someone said something that upset me, or I didn't really know how I felt or whatever, I mean, you can just tell them, like, I don't really know how to respond to that right now. Can you give me some time to think about it? There's nothing weird about that. Anyone should be able to understand and relate to that. It's just that people don't often set those boundaries. They don't often say, like, I'm not ready to respond to that yet. Or like, hey, you know what? For some reason, I'm feeling really weird about this or really angry, whatever you're feeling. I'm uncomfortable. I'm not sure how to reply. I just need some time. Or can you give me some time? You know, I'll get back to you. Whatever. That's perfectly okay. You're totally allowed to do that. And I did that a lot. And it's gotten easier for me in the moment to assess what I'm doing and also to stick up for myself. Thankfully, since I am the way I am, I have a very strong sense of like wrong and right, and I care about people's feelings, but sometimes I can be really blunt in the sense that I'll say something that not everyone else would maybe be willing to say. And now I'm able to harness that and use it with setting boundaries, because I've realized that like I don't give two hoots what the other person thinks. Like, this isn't about them, and they can't make it about them if they want it to be, because it's just not. I have no problem telling someone like, you need to back off, especially if it's someone who's like in my personal life. If I care about the person now, I have no problem being like, chill out, you need to back off, I need some time, whatever. Not in a rude way, but just in a respectful, like, I can't handle this, but I'll think about it. And that's the thing, is that you actually really have to think about it. It's really, really rude to tell someone that you're going to get back to them and then just not. And it can permanently alter a relationship to do that. And if that's what you want, fine. I mean, it's kind of a passive aggressive way to like end a relationship, but you can do that if you want to, if that's the only healthy way for you to not get more damaged on the way out. Okay, like, I'm not gonna judge that, but generally speaking, when you have these situations, if you do need to take some time, you should be doing that with the intent of then, like I said, later on, when you have some private time where it's more appropriate, you go back and think, analyze, figure it out, learn, grow, then go back with your more mature perspective or your, you know, your words that you're sure about. And over time, this just becomes so automatic and so much easier to do, and you start to feel more like, hey, you know what, like, I'm a good person and I stand up for myself and I stand up for others and I believe in what I believe in and I'm doing something for myself that's good. And I think I've always kind of been more one of those like mom friend types. I often was taking care of my two little brothers, and I think that's maybe where it stemmed from. But I've never been scared to like help someone else out. So if someone I care about needs to change their order or forgot something or whatever, I will be the first one to like jump up out of my seat and be like, hey, you know, you messed this up for my friend. But when it's me, I'm a mouse and I have no ability to be like, excuse me, like, I didn't want this. And when I started seeing that in myself was when I saw it in my mom, and I would actually get upset inside when she would like eat a full meal of something that she didn't like or want. I'm like, when it wasn't her fault, I would understand if she ordered the wrong thing and she was too embarrassed to like change it. Okay, that's your decision. You would have to pay probably for something else, depending on the situation. But if someone else messes up your order, your whatever, if you paid for it or you asked for it, you waited for it, it should be right. And that's not a rude thing. Like, that's that person's job, and they would be just as ticked off if they got the wrong thing. If they don't like pepperoni and you give them pepperoni, they're probably gonna be like, hey, I don't like pepperoni, this isn't what I ordered. So didn't want to be that, like, weak-willed, I guess. I want to be able to stand up for myself enough to, like, eat the foods that I want, or be able to say something so trivial. How small is that? Like, the person's never gonna remember. They don't care. Like, they probably, you're the least of their worries if they're working in, like, a restaurant environment. As long as you're generally nice to them, they're really not gonna care. Especially if you're nice to them, they're gonna be helpful to you. So that was probably too long of a tangent, but I also think that it's a very relatable tangent. I feel like a lot of people say the same thing. It's like almost just like an internet thing that everyone agrees upon at this point. I feel like that, like, it's hard to stick up for yourself in that kind of situation, specifically being at the restaurant. A lot of people just don't say anything when something's wrong. And I get not wanting to be rude, but it's not rude to set boundaries at all. You're not doing anything wrong. Remember, it's a wall around you. It is not about the other people. You're not hurting anyone. You're just keeping your wall intact, and that's perfectly okay. It's not, it doesn't make you a bad person, and no one should ever feel guilty for establishing their boundaries. So I hope that this was somewhat helpful and had a direction, and I don't know if it was quite a full circle, but I guess I just know how bad it felt for me when I would end up in situations, whether they were interpersonal situations with friends or family, or if it was just something between me and myself, choosing to do or not to do something, or letting myself, leave a situation if I wasn't comfortable, whatever. Being able to stick with those things just feels good over time and relieves a lot of this, like, weird pressure that you might feel when you're in an awkward situation, because it doesn't feel awkward anymore because you know what you want. So I would just challenge you, like I said, to go a week or something, just every day. Reflect when you need to, whenever it works best for you. Switch things up. Write it down or make a note in your phone if you feel like you need to, especially if you feel like you're not going to remember what the incident was. Just, like, run to the bathroom real quick or something and make, like, a quick note. Get whatever that emotional burst is out if you need to, so that you can easily revive it later and analyze it. Just figure out what works for you and try to keep practicing. Start small if you need to, but know that this is a really, really powerful thing that builds into a huge skill that just feels really empowering and helpful. It's kind of like you become your own caretaker in a sense, and you're able to bail yourself out of situations that you weren't able to before, or that you might have, relied on someone else to bail you out of before. You can definitely do this for yourself. It's hard, certainly, when you're starting. I would never say that it's not, but it's doable, and that's what's important. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this little chat and it wasn't too spastic. I'm really hyped up about this light and kind of excited to edit this footage and see what it looks like. Knowing me, I'm probably gonna have, like, something in my teeth or just something embarrassing that's gonna ruin the whole video in, like, starlight. But hopefully not. And I will see you guys